Hello, everyone. I am back with chapter 34 of System Synthesis, titled Round 2. Itsuki wasn't sure what had pissed off Todoroki, but to create an ice wall big and tall enough to exceed the height of the stadium was a bit more than overdone, and not to mention dangerous. There is no way such a sudden drop in Zero's body temperature could be good for him. Ichigo knew from personal experience that the sudden formation of ice over him would hurt, and that's just because of the coldness of the ice, whilst not including the pain from the solid nature of ice itself. He frowned. He knew he was thinking too much. The rules of the match were clearly stated: anything goes, as long as the other person doesn't die. And like Hisashi had said, feeling pain was fine. Not that Isuku was complaining about it. He had, on more than one occasion, hit Katsuki hard enough to break bones. But what didn't settle well with him was the fact that Todoroki was acting up in frustration. And from what Isuku knew, the only one who could frustrate him that much was a quick glance with the help of his skills, as the section where Hiro sat told him that Endeavor was currently missing, like he had been expecting. Isuku frowned even more. Students, teachers, and security personnel aside, no one else is allowed to walk backstage. Not even the number 2 hero. When did he interact with Todoroki? And what did he say that managed to piss off the teen that much? A packet hit him in the face and dropped innocently into his lap. Ichigo blinked, scrunching up his nose and looking down. Then he looked up and saw Katsuki scowling at him. Eat, he pretty much threatened. Kirishima, who had been sitting next to him, looked between them, amused. Don't make me hit you. Whipped his head back around to focus to the next match. You hit me anyway, Isugu mumbled with a pout as he opened the snack bar and started nibbling on it. He needed to eat anyway to regain his lost HP and XP, but the matters were a little too interesting for him to walk and go to the dining hall to get food. He wished he had an ability like Hawk so he could just use one of his wings or something alike to get the food for him. Midoriya! Uraka's bubbly voice called for him. Itsugu turned around and saw her skip her way to him with a brown bag in her hand. Here, this is for you, she said, holding out the bag for him. Huh? Itsugu looked at her confused. I don't know what was trying to give it to you, but this dropped in front of me while I was on my way back from the washroom. It has your name written on it, so I bought it for you, she said. Oh, Itsuki nodded and smiled gratefully as he took it from her hands. He shifted aside so she could sit down and checked into the bag. The familiar scribble and doodle gave him enough hints, and whatever little doubt he had in his mind washed away as a red feather shot out of the bag and disappeared just as quickly. He pulled out the lunchbox inside. His nose crinkled as he snorted, seeing the Hawks-themed lunchbox. Well, Suga knew Hawks could tell if someone was using up to something his feathers. He so decided to use his passive skills to check the item once before he opened it. The moment the scent of food invaded his nose, his mouth watered and his stomach made an embarrassingly loud gurgling noise. His face turned a bright shade of red as he glanced around. Besides him, Shinzo looked amused, Ida a little confused, and Uraka was smiling at him like he was a cute animal or something similar. Is it okay if I eat here? Itsugu asked hesitantly. He really didn't want him to have to go to the dining hall to eat food and miss out on the message. Sir, Uraka said. Yeah, go ahead, Shinzo said with a dismissing wave of his hand. Certainly, Ida answered, pushing his glasses up. Although I am concerned, did you not have anything during lunch break, Midoriya? I don't actually remember seeing you in the dining hall. I did eat, but I guess it wasn't enough, Ichiku said with an awkward chuckle. You shouldn't do that, Ida said. There, Mr. Dad, Shinso cut in. Let the guy eat in peace, you can ground him later on. Uraka laughed as Ida spluttered from Shinso's comment, visibly flustered. Do you guys want some? Itsuki said, holding up the lunchbox while he took a bite of one of the chicken pieces. Nah, I'm good. I already ate too much, Shinso said. Thank you for offering, but I'll have to pass too, Ida said politely. Nope, I already ate enough and I don't want to risk getting sick before the match, Uraka replied. Itsuki shrugged. Sure, more food for me. Shinso snorted beside him. Todoroki vs. Sarah was perhaps the only match that ended as quickly as theirs did. Following matches took a fair amount of time, and mostly were all very close matches. The girl from Class 1B with a plant-based quirk was really good. Itsuki wished he could get to talk to her and learn more about her quirk. He had never met a person with a plant-based quirk. Ironic considering how common the attribute was in South and East Asian countries. Itsuki was done eating by the time Ida had to leave for his match. Who was he against? Itsuki asked. He hadn't really focused on the lots from others earlier. Oh, he's up against Hatsume, Uraka informed him. The match was interesting at best, and unfair at worst. Hatsume pretty much used Ida to advertise her gadgets. All of which, in Itsuki's humble opinion, were incredible inventions. It was kind of painful to see what was less of a fight and more of a game of tag that where Hatsume made Ida chase her around while she advertised her incredible veins of gadgets. She's really good though. You're right, Nana said, popping into existence by his side. For someone in the support department, she is incredible at reading the boys' attack pattern and dodging them. Something tells me if she took the fight seriously, the boy would be knocked out before he could start up his engines, Saburo said, floating on Itsuki's other side, right above Shinso's head. This still hurts to watch, Banjo said in his mind. She's toying with the guy. What are you guys talking about? This is hilarious. Yurichi laughed. The next match was between Ojiro and Monoma. The blondes seemed to have copied the quirks of someone else, shrooms of kinds, but Ojiro was well adept, avoiding being touched by them for as long as he could. But then one of the spores exploded, and the boy with the tail quirk dropped on the ground unconscious. Then it was a match between Kirishima and Tetsu. It was really funny to watch given that they both had similar quirks and similar personalities. So the dialogues they threw at each other were very uncannily alike as well. And for the match to end up in a draw felt poetic. Then it was the time for the last matchup of the first round. One of the matches Itsuki was waiting for since the beginning. Good luck, Uraka, Itsuki said as Uraka stood up. Itsuki flinched as he noticed the way her face was contorted into a scowl and, are you alright? Ida asked, ever concerned about his classmates. Uraka nodded, lips pressing into a thin line beneath them. Katsuki stood up, a glare ever present on his face. But before he left, he stopped and looked up at Uraka. Instead of a sneer or a scowl, the blonde eyed the girl with a neutral expression before giving her a nod and heading his way to the ground. Itsuki blinked, surprised at Katsuki's little nod of respect. Sure, his friend had calmed a lot since they were children, but for him to nod at Uraka was like that meant he acknowledged her strength and saw her as a worthy opponent. Seeing the way Katsuki nodded at her, something seemed to shift inside of Uraka as her expression relaxed. A determined expression took over her face in place of the previous nervous scowl. Then she looked down at Asuku and Ida and smiled her usually beaming smile. Wish me luck, she said before skipping her way down the stairs towards the stadium. A celebrity since his middle school days with a face only a mother could love. Itsuku spat out the water he was drinking as he heard Hisachi's commentary. Why did Sashi have to attack him like that? Itsuku thought, coughing violently as his body tried to laugh and choke at the same time. What did he do? Versus one of my personal favorites, Uraka or Chako from 1A. Itsuku found himself sitting at the edge of his seat as the match started, but because for once he had no idea what to expect. While he knew extensively about both of their quirks, the problem was the recent changes Katsuki had been showing. The blonde was improving slowly but surely. In the recent heroics classes, Itsuku had realized with a dawning awe that Katsuki's fighting pattern had changed. Before Itsuku knew every weakness his friend had, like the back of his hand, he could no longer say the same about him. He didn't have enough information on him for his skill hindsight to work at maximum efficiency. The match started with Uraka lurching forward, ready to attack, which in Asuku's opinion was a good strategy. The only possible strategy, honestly. Itsuku mentally corrected himself. What are your thoughts? Shinso asked. Itsuku hummed, raising his eyebrows as he looked over his shoulder at the boy. About the match? Shinso clarified. Itsuku took in a deep breath and leaned back. Speaking from a completely unbiased view, Kachan virtually has no weaknesses. He has an excellent quirk control and perhaps one of the strongest long-range quirk users I know. Attacking from afar is not going to work for Uraka with a defensive quirk like hers. But Itsuku watched as Katsuki raised his hand while Uraka was just a few feet away from him and created a large explosion. There is a way for Uraka to get the upper hand, and that is to make him float. The smoke dissipated, and Itsuku saw Katsuki crouching, pinning down nothing but a jacket. His eyes widened as he noticed Uraka appearing behind the blonde, ready to activate her quirk. She threw her jacket to create a fan, making it fly with her quirk while she moved behind the Bakugo, Shota explained. It was a brilliant move, only Kachan's reaction time is way faster than that. Katsuki moved in the very instant he noticed Uraka behind him, an explosion flying off his palm, directed at the girl. And since Uraka was still mid-air, she was unable to dodge. And that's how the match continued for the next few minutes. Uraka repeatedly charged forward no matter the number of times he was blown back. Slowly, the crowd was starting to boo Katsuki, throwing harsh comments his way. Itsuka wanted to thrash the person that Katsuki wasn't worthy of being a hero for hurting someone weaker than him. How dare those people insult both of his friends like that? How dare they think Uraka isn't strong enough? How dare they think Katsuki was doing all this just for the sake of being cruel? Saburo scoffed, looking at the crowd of people, complaining with a disgusted look on his face. How are they heroes? And asked, a look of annoyance on his usually calm face. Idiots. The whole lot of them. Nana huffed. It was then that he noticed it, Uraka's true plan. He couldn't have fought the proud smile that stretched on his face even if he tried. Hey, that's not the way someone who wants to be a hero should act, someone from the crowd shouted. If you're so much stronger than her, then just throw her out of the ring. Stop toying with her. A group in the crowd has started booing, Hisashi announced, with voice sounding a little concerned. But to be honest, what's the big idea? Is the one who said he's toying with her a pro? Shota spoke. His deep voice rumbled over the microphone like thunder of a cloud, dipping towards hostility and rage. How many years of active duty, If that's all you're taking from this, then leave, Shota said, and from the well-controlled tone of his voice, Itsuku knew just how much that one comment had pissed off the hero. No point in saying, go home and start looking at job hunting sites, you ignorant fool. This man, good lord, Yurichi exclaimed in his mind. She's come this far, and he knows her strength, Shota said. His caution shows that he sees her as a worthy opponent. It's exactly because he wants to win this so badly that there's no room for carelessness or holding back. It is truly impressive how he defends your friend, praises the girl, and reprimands the hero all at once, Shimori said. By charging in lows, he's kept Katan's attacks focused on the ground. Itsuko mumbled out loud. All to gather her weapons. In an instant, there were several pieces of rocks floating up in the air, ready to shower down like a meteor shower. A meteor shower? Hisashi exclaimed. Keep up, Shota said, proud. Uraka clapped her hands together to deactivate her quirk. The rocks and the reeds then showered down and bang! A gigantic explosion shook the ground, and once the smoke disappeared, all the rocks and debris Uraka had painstakingly collected was turned into dust. What an explosion! Hisashi shouted. Uraka's secret plan just went up in smoke. Isuku bit the inside of his cheek as he realized the match had just ended. Right, time to get serious, Uraka. Katsuki growled and took a step forward, ready to attack only to stop right away. He watched with wide, surprised eyes as Uraka's body swayed unsteadily and she fell down. She's exceeded her weight capacity. Numeri immediately stepped in to check and then declared, Uraka is unable to continue. Bakugo moves on to the second round. Itsuki watched as Katsuki stood there with a calm expression on his face. There was no boasting, no bragging, no comments about Uraka's loss. A far cry from what he used to be when they were younger. He had grown so much. Can I take her to RG? Katsuki asked after a moment of silence. Numeri looked up at him, eyes narrowing as he studied the blonde. Upon finding what she was looking for, she smirked and then nodded. She isn't hurt too badly, just exhausted. Katsuki nodded and walked over to the girl on the ground. Crouching down, he waited as Numeri slowly picked up Uraka and placed her on Katsuki's back. The blonde jerked her body up a little to secure his grip on her legs before standing up straighter. Behind him, he could hear the girl sniffle and cry softly as he walked down the stairs. Katsuki scoffed after listening to the sniffling and crying behind him. What you even crying about? I lost. Uraka whimpered. Had it been a normal situation, the two of them perhaps wouldn't ever have a conversation like this. In a normal situation, they only tolerated each other so as to not to pick a fight for Isuku's sake. But this wasn't a normal situation. Uraka had fought tooth and nail against Katsuki, and while Katsuki would rather kiss someone's shoe than ever admit it out loud, the girl's last move had actually caught him by surprise, and he didn't get surprised so easily. Katsuki clicked his tongue irritatedly once again. So, did you not give it your best? I gave my everything, Uraka cried. Then, Katsuki asked, it's a battle. There's always a winner and a loser. What's there to cry about? You gave your best. That's all that matters. It's not your fault. I'm just better than you. The blonde receives a smack to his head. Oi, he growled. I'll fucking drop you. Shut up, Uraka whined, but wiped away her tears. Katsuki was right. She had given her best but still failed. There was nothing to regret about it. She only had to work harder so she could hand Katsuki's ass over to him next time. Don't hang around Suku too much. You'll become a reckless idiot like him, Katsuki grumbled after a while of silence. Uraka blinked, surprised at first, and then laughed. Oi, watch it, Katsuki snapped as Uraka slapped his arm once more while she laughed. Alright, everyone. We will have a short break now so the listeners can prepare themselves for the next round. Hisashi announced. Ichigo got up from his seat and headed inside the stadium to go to the preparation room. On his way, he met up with Katsuki. The blonde looked slightly frustrated and annoyed as he walked with his hands stuffed in his pocket. Gachan! Ichigo beamed, seeing his best friend and skipping up to him. Congratulations on moving on to the second round. The blonde stopped walking and stared, before scoffing at him and walking past him. Ichigo stopped, watching the blonde leave, the look of understanding on his face. Ichigo understood Katsuki was in deep thoughts about something, and knew it was better to leave his friend alone when he had an expression like that. He could always talk to him later on. Should I go check on Naraka? Was he be in the infirmary, or has she already left? Ichigo decided to go check on her after he visited the prep room. It was on his way to the infirmary anyway. However, to his surprise, he found Uraka already present inside of the prep room holding a packet of spare gym clothes. Her lips were pressed in a thin line as she stared at her clothes, unaware of Isuku standing at the door. Uraka! Isuku called, gaining her attention. Uraka flinched slightly at being startled and looked up. A smile formed on her face as she looked at Asuku. Midoriya! She chirped in her usual cheerful voice. Only Asuku had heightened sense, and he easily caught the slight strain in her voice. You were amazing out there, Uraka, Asuku said softly. You think so? She asked with a smile on her face. I got a little carried away at the end when I thought I could win. Isuku's expression softened, his ears picking up on the way she struggled to keep her voice steady. She was being so brave, smiling even though he knew the loss was more likely eating alive on the inside. Are you hurt? He asked. Nothing much. I'm healing bit by bit because my stamina is low. So only these little scrapes and scratches are left, she answered with an enthusiastic nod of her head. Isugu looked at her for a few seconds, studying her expression. There was far more than scrapes and scratches on her, but it was obvious he didn't mean her physical wounds. Well, not entirely, at the very least. Darn it, she said, curling her hand into a fist. The quiver in her voice was so slight Isugu would have missed it if he didn't have her attention entirely on her. Bakugo was so strong I couldn't even put a scratch on him. It's alright though. I'll just have to try harder next time. Then her expression dimmed as she continued. You're always looking ahead to the next challenge, Midoriya. I can't do that. Not yet, at least. I lost, but I don't want to lose again. Isugu opened his mouth to speak, but was cut off by the sound of Hisashi announcing the start of Kirishima and Tetsu Tetsu tiebreaker match. When he returned his attention back to Uraka and noticed the increasing redness of her eyes, he realized it was better if he left for the time being. Uraka was upset at losing, yes, but she wasn't broken. She didn't need sympathy or white, sweet lies. Good luck for your next match, Midoriya, Uraka smiled. Ichigo returned the smile and nodded. I'll see you later then. Yeah, Uraka chirped. With that, Ichigo walked out of the room, ignoring Uraka calling her parents and the quiet sound of her crying as he walked away out of courtesy. I'll be rooting for you, Uraka. Ichigo had been walking towards the door that led to the bleachers when he ran into the one person he didn't ever want to run into. Endeavor. The sight of the burly man with flames enshrouding him might be imitating for others, heroes and villain alike. But Ichigo only felt his left eye twitch out of irritation as rage bubbled inside of him. The stories he heard from Dabi and Shoto replayed in his mind, adding fuel to his rage. Ichigo didn't know if he should thank or be mad at his dad for all the patience training he had given him before UA. Because if it wasn't for those training sessions, he might just have punched the hero in front of him without any hesitation. Consequences be damned, Endeavor. Ishigu spoke, voice cold. What are you doing back here? The flame hero completely ignored his question and said, I saw what you did out there. To create such a force with just a clap of your hand, your strength seems to be on par with All Might. Had it been anyone else apart from the flame hero, Ishigu might have preened from the compliment. Hearing the words from Endeavor only reminded him of the comments he had said to his children. I have to get going, Ishigu said instead. His patience wasn't limitless like his dad, and neither was his kind and gentle like his mother. If he stayed here any longer, he might do something that would put his chances of getting a hero permit at risk. He knew he was being borderline disrespectful to someone far older than him, and his mother would probably be disappointed in his behavior. But Ishigu couldn't bring himself to care at the moment. He decided to feel guilty for it some other time. A heavy hand clamped on his shoulder, making Ishigu's fight or flight instincts flare inside of him. The hostility radiated off of Endeavor in waves. The hostility combined with the weight of the heavy hand triggered the young teen, reminding him of the touch of the Nomu, the feeling of getting his hand crushed by the beast's strength, the amount of bone breaking, blood, so much blood. Danger, 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 danger. Fear resistance is in effect. Itsuki broke out of his panic-stricken chain of thoughts, only to fall into one of rage at being touched without his permission, especially given that he was clearly trying to walk away from the hero. It is my son Shoto's duty to surpass All Might, Endeavor said. I hope you do well in the next match. Put up a good fight against him. It will be a valuable test for him. Duty? Duty? How dare he? Itsuki so badly wanted to give the hero a piece of his mind, but a press of cold touch against his shoulder grounded him, reminding him of what was more important at the moment. So Itsuki looked over his shoulder, meeting the hero's blue eyes with an icy glare. I'm only going to say this politely once, and only because you're older than me, Endeavor, Itsuki said, voice dropping to something dangerous. Dominance is in effect. The air inside the hallway seemed to drop just from the team's glare and presence. Let go, Itsuki growled. The annoyance was evident on the hero's face. Itsuki felt the hand on his shoulder heat up, and the smell of cloth burning mixed in the air. A clear proof of the hero's disregard to the safety of others just for the sake of his own ego. But before either of the two could say anything, a third voice spoke up. Endeavor! Endeavor looked away first, and as Chick resisted the urge to smoke, he slowly tore his eyes away from Endeavor and looked in the direction of the voice. Hawks walked towards them, the same carefree look on his face as ever. Itsuki knew it was a pretense. He saw the way his eyes flicked towards Endeavor's hand on his shoulder, and the way his gaze hardened, and he clenched his jaw. Apart from students, teachers, and security personnel, no one's allowed in the back, not even family members of the participants, Hawks said. Endeavor removed his hand, and Itsuki sighed in relief. Not because he was worried earlier, but because the man's touch was getting a little too annoying to tolerate anymore. Little bird, Hawks said, looking at him with his usual professional smile, like he didn't know him outside of school. Itsuki understood the feigned distant behavior. The reason Hawks wasn't calling out the burn marks on Itsuki's shoulder was because it would only lead to a commotion. It would only be a waste of time since there was nothing they could do to the hero at that moment, and to create a commotion only for the hero to be let go after a simple reprimand of "please don't do it again" would honestly feel insulting. "Your match starts soon. You might want to hurry," Hawk said. Izuku looked at him, bored and annoyed at being disrupted by the flame hero, and nodded. But right before he left, he couldn't help but add, while walking away from the heroes, "I'm not All Might," he said. "Well, obviously," Endeavor tried to say, but Izuku cut in with another piercing glare. "And Shoto isn't you. Both of these competitors have shown brilliant performances so far," Hisashi commented, "but there is only room for one person to go up the ladder and win the competition. It's Midoriya versus Todoroki." Izuku walked out to the ground and stopped once he was in the light. Up in the commentator's box, just as Hisashi had announced the participants of the first match, Shota felt his phone buzz in his pocket, confused as to who might message him now. He quickly checked his phone to find a message from Hawk's bib. Izuku met Endeavor before the match. Just then, Izuku walked out in the light. Shota frowned and leaned forward to get a better look at his kid. His eyes widened slightly when he noticed the burn mark on his gym uniform. "He didn't," Shota growled lowly. Besides him, Hisashi made a quiet choking sound as his hand curled around his neck. Show, your quirk. Stop." Shota stopped, sucking in a deep breath as he leaned back into his chair. He sent a quick message to Hawks and Nezu to tighten the security in the back, to make sure no one unwanted got in, not even a hero. Down below, Izuku looked back at the twin-cloaked boy and noticed the way his blue eyes fell on the burn mark on his shoulder. He noticed the way his eyes widened as he realized who had done it. Before, Izuku had been confused as to how to comfort him about his opinion on his quirk usage, but now he had a plan in mind, both to save Todoroki and to get him out of his father's clutches, and to send Endeavor a message. So, he tore the sleeve of his uniform with one drag and held it up to show the burnt side. His eyes met Nemuri, who nodded in understanding. The burnt sleeve was a small token, but it was evidence. "Whoa there." Midoriya tears off the sleeve of his shirt. "It's an intimidation or a show of power. The reasons are unknown. But damn, his arms are more toned than mine," Hisashi shouted. "Mike," Shota said warningly next to him. "Sorry, Eraser. Anyways, midnight. Whenever you're ready, take it away." Nomori took the sleeve from him and gave him a quick once-over. "You don't seem injured," she said. "I'm not," Itsuku assured her. She nodded and walked away. "Alright, I'll start the match then." "He'll obviously use his eyes to freeze me in one place," Itsuku thought as he went up on the stage, recalling the powerful attack Todoroki had used against Zero. "Can't let him do that." The buzzer rang and Itsuku bolted. Sprint is in effect. He moved and jumped as he closed in on Todoroki. Right leg bent, aimed at Todoroki's shoulder. Todoroki had decently fast reflexes as he raised his hand to cover his face and created a sheath of ice on his arm to act as a shield. Itsuku's kick shattered the shield into pieces, but lost a considerable amount of power in the process. When his kick is attached to Todoroki's shoulder, it only sent the boy sliding a few inches. He dropped on the ground using the momentum from his kick to spin around and followed it up with a spinning crescent kick. But Todoroki moved back just enough to let Itsuku's heel brush against his twin-colored hair. The fight starts and Midoriya has immediately pounced on his opponent with two back-to-back strong kicks. Damn, that little bean doesn't seem willing to give any room to breathe. Itsuku saw Todoroki's foot pressing against the ground and frost forming against his shoes, and quickly jumped back to avoid the onslaught of attack. He created just enough space between him and Todoroki with the help of Sprint to prepare for the attack. Ice shards, sharp and deadly, sprouted from the ground in a chain, heading towards him. Cold resistance is in effect. Fire breathing is in effect. All stats have temporarily increased by 10 points. A sharp pain shot up his arm as his fist collided with the ice shards. The force from his punch shattered all the ice into pieces, going far back enough to push Todoroki back. Itsuki felt the tickle of regeneration heal the cuts that formed on his knuckles from the shards, just as Todoroki sent the same attack towards him once more, in quick succession. Itsuki once again punched the shards with his other hand, breaking them into pieces. Once Itsuki had determined that Todoroki's shards could move only in a straight line, he jumped to the side to avoid the third attack, and sprinted towards the boy. But he was stopped as a 6-foot-tall wall of icicles and ice shards formed in between them. Itsuki skidded to a stop, inches away from the shards aimed towards his torso. An idea sparked in his mind with the help of analytic mind. With a quick enhanced punch, he shattered the wall of ice with ease, and quickly picked up the icicles pieces before jumping back. White smoke escaped his mouth as his body temperature slowly rose. Green flames soon erupted, looping down his neck and down his arms before it covered the icicles Itsuki was holding. Fire breathing first form is in effect. Then, Itsuki activated a skill he had rarely used out of practice. Well, it might not seem so useful to others. For Suku, it made up for the lack of a direct long-range skill. One for all, second quick, perfect aim is in use, Kai is in effect. Itsuki's vision was enhanced, and with the help of perfect aim, he suddenly saw the path for the icicles. With one aimed to graze his opponent, Itsuki snapped his wrist and threw it forward. Are you trying to stretch out the match? Todoroki asked as he moved to dodge the second icicle thrown at him. But with perfect aim in effect, the icicle still cut through Todoroki's arm. It won't work. I'll end this match quickly. But you're already shivering, Todoroki-kun, Itsuki said with a teasing tone in his voice. He held up an icicle and let his flames melt down. A little warmth might be nice for you. Todoroki's gaze hardened and he ground out, I am not using my father's quirk. And there it is, the problem. He thinks it's his father's quirk. Don't you see it? Itsuki asked as he jumped forward, a toxic green flame covering his foot to strengthen his power. The several layers of wall that Todoroki managed to create didn't even stand a chance against Itsuki's strength. Quirks are just physical attributes. Your ice is freezing your body. You can just use your fire to thaw it out. You can be stronger if you just, I'm going to win without his quirk. Todoroki shouted back, I'm going to become a hero without his quirk. I'll rise to the top without his quirk. Don't fuck with me, Itsuki snapped, sending punches mixed with the power of fire breathing, and one for all aimed at the ground. The floor cracked, and the sheer force made it explode upwards. Don't you dare say you can become a hero when you're planning to half-ass it. Itsuki didn't mean to be, but he was pissed. Itsuki jumped and kicked several broken pieces of the floor that shot up from the ground, sending them flying towards Todoroki's direction. Don't you dare say you're going to win with just half your powers while everyone here is giving their best. I'm not going to let you disrespect their efforts like that. Itsuki gave up on trying to be nice and lunged, aiming a punch right into Todoroki's gut. Even though he had controlled his power a lot, it was still enough to send the boy flying backwards. Become a hero? Don't joke with me, Todoroki. How do you plan to become a hero with half of your power when you can't even scratch me? Once again, Todoroki attacked. I started shooting up. Itsuki quickly jumped back, avoiding them with ease. While Todoroki's attacks were powerful without his fire, there weren't a lot of variations. The next time Todoroki repeated the same attack, Ichigo didn't move. He stood his ground, glaring at the boy. He didn't even make a sound as one of the icicles tore through his legs. He reached down and snapped the top of the icicle, then crushed it within his palm. The shards dug into his palm, drawing out blood. Red mixed with the ice as they fell down on the ground. Use your fire, Ichigo demanded. Burning emerald eyes bored into Todoroki's icy blue eyes. I don't need to, Todoroki said through gritted teeth. His words were cut off in the middle as Ichigo extended his hand and pulled the boy forward. Then once he was close enough, Ichigo changed the direction of one of the largest shards the boy had created and pushed the boy towards it. The audience winced as the boy slammed against the shard with a force strong enough to crack the ice. You could have avoided that if you used your fire, Ichigo said, waiting for the boy to get back up on his feet. Shut up, Todoroki said through gritted teeth. I don't need. Ichigo picked up one of the largest shards on the ground and tossed it towards the boy. You can save another person if you just use your fire. I'm not going to use my father's quirk, Shoto shouted as he destroyed the shard thrown towards him. It's not your father's quirk, Ichigo snapped, shouting at the top of his lungs as he lunged forward, kicking the boy back. Even if it came from him, it's not his anymore. The power is within you. Another kick sent the boy flying further until he stopped far too close to the edge line. You choose who you want to become. It's your power, Shoto. The quirk, Ichigo shouted as toxic green flames engulfed him. It's yours. Alarm bells rang in his head as one of his passive quirk activated. Fire resistance is in effect. Oil Suns barely picked it up in time. The sharp rise in temperature as bright hot flames erupted. Ichigo grinned fairly as the flames subsided and he looked at Todoroki, wounded, shivering, and panting. The boy stood, determination burning in his eyes. I thought you were trying to win, damn it, Todoroki said in a watery voice as he gave a quivering grin. And yet you're trying to inspire me. Which one of us isn't taking this seriously? Ichigo grinned, proud and exhilarated. Todoroki's flames were beautiful. What are you even smiling for? Todoroki said, still grinning even though his lips quivered. Ichigo only giggled in return. Todoroki laughed, feeling a little crazy, high on the adrenaline. I'm going to be a hero, he said. Ichigo took in a deep breath as his heart thundered in his chest. It was going all fine until Shoto! Endeavor shouted from the stands. And by just his voice, Ichigo felt all the hair on his body rise, urging him to hiss like an annoyed cat. Ichigo decided to give in to the urge. Oi! He snarled. Shut up! An attempt of pep talk from Endeavor to his son, Hisashi said, poorly hiding his amusement as he added, but it seems like Midoriya doesn't like distractions. He's lucky Isiku's too busy fighting Todoroki right now. Shota mumbled once Hisashi turned off the mic. Ichigo turned his attention back to Todoroki and smirked. Think you can still fight? Oh please, whatever happens next is on you. Game on. Ichigo watched as Todoroki concentrated his flames into his palms and shit, no wait. Ichigo knew his left side would balance out his ice, but as it turned out, Todoroki had decided to go a full 100% with his inexperienced side, which in this case was bad. Not just for Isuku, but for everyone in the audience, because when cold air gets rapidly heated up, it explodes. Oh well, I asked for this, Isuku thought. over the inferno that blazed, and the sound of his own thundering heart. Ichigo heard Cementos asking Nomori to interfere and stop them, but they wouldn't have enough time. Fire breathing is in effect. One for all. 10% is in effect. Sprint is in effect. Fire resistance is in effect. Ichigo lurched forward. Gigantic walls of cement formed between him and Todoroki, and the intoxicating smell of Nomori's quirk started filling the air, but it wouldn't be enough to stop the two teens. High on adrenaline and euphoria, the two quirks smashed against the walls and it exploded. It took several seconds for the dust to settle. The entire stadium was silent, waiting with bated breath for the dust to settle down. The several feet high and several inches thick walls that Cementos had created were completely obliterated into dust. Midnight's quirk had been thrown back from the force wave that had spread across the entire place. Audience seats all the way to the commentator's box were cracked. A shadow was seen standing in the middle of the stadium. Midnight shakily stood up on her legs and squinted her eyes to see who it was. She took a step forward and Izuku Midoriya wins! The dust moved to show Izuku in the middle, all dirty, bloodied, and bruised, panting but still standing. The stage around him was completely destroyed, save for the piece he was on. And Todoroki. Cementos looked around until he saw him. Todoroki Shoto, far out of bounds, lay on the floor, groaning and twitching. Holy cow, Evasor, what's up with your class? Hisashi exclaimed, fixing his glasses that had fallen off when he jumped back in surprise from the explosion. Shoto, who had remained completely unbothered and hadn't even flinched, calmly answered into the mic. The rapid heating of the chill air caused it to expand and explode. Ichigo limped his way up to Todoroki and held out his hand. The twin-quirked boy groaned and looked at him, and extended his hand up, grabbing Midoriya's. The green-haired boy grinned and pulled him up. I'm sorry if I offended you somehow, Todoroki. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I wanted you to understand that just using your fire won't make you Endeavor. Todoroki looked at him and nodded, wincing afterward at the action. Then he paused and pouted. Shoto. Huh? Izuku asked. Call me Shoto, like you did earlier. Izuku was taken aback, but quickly nodded with a beaming smile. Then you can call me Izuku. Todoroki squinted his eyes at him and mumbled. So bright. You too. Midnight called. Head to the infirmary, now! Izuku noticed the helper bots arriving with a stretcher and said, Oh, good. His body swayed side to side. I was about to pass out anyway. And with that, his body went entirely limp. Izuku! Shoto exclaimed, reaching out to grab the boy by his shirt before he fell on the ground. He cried out as sharp pain exploded in his arm from the strain of holding Izuku up. Nomori rushed over to them and held the boy and put Izuku down on the stretcher. Would you prefer to walk or be carried? Shoto looked at the empty stretcher bought for him, and then at Izuku, and then plopped down on the empty one. I need to rest. All right, that is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.